You won't believe what happened when I returned to my hometown, Silver Creek, last summer. It was supposed to be a simple trip for my high school reunion, but things took a dark turn I never saw coming. Right when I arrived, I sensed this strange tension in the air. It was subtle, but something was definitely off. I caught up with some old friends, and while we laughed and reminisced, I noticed everyone seemed a bit on edge. The real shift came when I mentioned Sarah, a girl who went missing years ago. Instantly, the mood changed. Everyone fell silent, their expressions tightening as if I'd reopened an old wound. Later, I found out from an old classmate that Sarah had vanished during a woods party, her case turning cold after the locals failed to find her. The more I heard, the more I felt the urge to dig deeper. There was something everyone was hiding, and I needed to know what. A few days before the reunion, I decided to take a walk in those woods, hoping for closure or at least some answers. Venturing deeper, I stumbled upon a clearing and spotted an old tree with a carving. S.A. was here. My heart raced. Could this have been Sarah's spot? Suddenly, I heard rustling behind me and turned to find a group of people standing at the clearing's edge, watching me. Familiar faces, old friends, but their eyes were cold. "What are you doing here?" one of them asked, his tone sharp. I stammered, trying to explain my curiosity, but they didn't seem to care. Instead, they stepped closer, encircling me. Panic surged through me. "You should leave," another one said, their voice low and menacing. I turned to run, but they blocked my path, their expressions shifting from concern to something much darker. I pushed past them, sprinting back through the woods, my heart pounding in my chest. When I reached my car, I knew that I'd stumbled upon something I wasn't meant to uncover. I left Silver Creek that night, my mind in turmoil. The truth lay buried there, and the town wasn't ready to reveal it. Sometimes secrets are better left undisturbed.
I moved to Pine Hollow seeking a fresh start. The town charmed me at first, its quaint old brick buildings, the friendly smiles of its residents, and a comforting pace of life. But soon that tranquility was overshadowed by whispers of disappearances. It all began one afternoon at the local diner. A waitress, her hands trembling as she refilled my coffee, mentioned a girl named Emily who had vanished 3 months ago. Curiosity sparked within me. Each time I probed about Emily, every face turned grim, eyes averted. It felt like I had unearthed a collective secret. Determined to uncover the truth, I sought out Emily's mother. Her eyes were hollow, speaking of a lifetime of loss, as she sat in her dimly lit living room surrounded by old photographs.
"She was so full of life,"
she murmured, her voice cracking. I pressed on, asking what really happened. She hesitated, glancing toward the window as if expecting an eavesdropper.
"People here don't talk about it. They'd rather forget."
Intrigued, I ventured into the woods where Emily was last seen, hoping for a clue to solve the mystery. The trees loomed as a sense of dread began to creep up on me. The deeper I went, the more isolated I felt. In a clearing, something caught my eye, a piece of jewelry glinting in the dirt. It was a charm bracelet, one I recognized from a photo of Emily. My heart raced, and I backed away, instincts screaming that I was being watched. Suddenly, voices echoed through the thurr, the thurr, sir, surfer, sarah, t, surtur. A group of townsfolk emerged, their expressions unreadable. "What are you doing here?" one asked, their smile a thin veil over something darker. I stammered out an excuse, but they moved closer, the friendliness slipping away. "You should leave things alone," another warned, the unspoken threat heavy in the air. I left Pine Hollow that night, the weight of their eyes pressing on my back. I never learned what truly happened to Emily, but the town's silence still haunts me. Some secrets, it seems, are best left buried, and Pine Hollow has plenty. I still can't shake the memory of that one summer when I returned to my hometown Crestwood for my grandmother's funeral. It had been years since I'd set foot there, and everything seemed just as I remembered. The old school, the park, and even that tiny train station frozen in time. But something felt off, like the whole town was holding its breath. On the day of the funeral, I caught up with some old friends, and we spent hours reminiscing about our childhood. I'd barely settled into a familiar rhythm when I heard about the train that ran through town. It was old, a relic, really, and rumors circulated that it was haunted. Some people claimed it never quite reached its destination. I laughed at the stories, but deep down, they intrigued me. One restless night, I decided to wander around and ended up at the train station. The night was eerily quiet, and I felt drawn to the platform. Before I knew it, headlights appeared in the distance. The train was coming. The train pulled up, its ancient whistle echoing through the stillness. A few passengers disembarked, looking disoriented and weary. My curiosity got the better of me, so I approached them, but they didn't seem to notice me at all. Their faces were blank, eyes wide yet unseeing. I called out, but they continued walking toward the town, drawn by some invisible force. It felt wrong, deeply unsettling. I stepped back just as the train's doors closed with a heavy thud, and the engine roared to life. Suddenly, a woman stepped off the train just before it departed. She seemed panicked, glancing around as if searching for something. Or someone. I moved closer, wanting to help, but before I could say a word, she pointed at me and whispered, "You have to stop them." Before I could ask what she meant, the train pulled away, leaving her standing there. I rushed toward her, but she vanished into thin air, swallowed by the night. I stood there, heart racing, questioning if I'd imagined the entire encounter. The next day, I learned from friends that a girl had gone missing years ago, someone who had boarded that very train. I left Crestwood soon after. I was never sure if what I saw was real, but the memory of that night still haunts me. You won't believe what happened when I started teaching at Maple Valley High last fall. I was thrilled about my new job in this charming little town, but things got weird pretty fast. The kids were unusually well behaved. It was almost eerie. You know how teenagers can be, right? But these kids were almost too perfect. At first, I thought it was just the small town charm. But as I spent more time with them, I noticed peculiar things. Whenever I encouraged debate in class, they hesitated, almost like they were afraid to express themselves. Odd, right? Teenagers usually love to share their opinions. One day, I overheard a couple of students whispering in the hallway, talking about the rules, and how it's better not to attract attention. I thought that was odd. What kind of rules were they talking about? My curiosity got the better of me, so I started digging. I chatted with a few parents at a school event, trying to gauge the town's vibe. But whenever I mentioned the kids' behavior, their expressions changed. They'd smile politely but quickly steer the conversation elsewhere, glancing around like they were scared someone might overhear. It was as if they all agreed to keep something quiet. The more I probed, the more isolated I felt. One afternoon, while grading papers, I noticed a group of students standing outside my classroom, just watching me. They didn't move, just stood there in line, staring. It was unsettling. I opened the door and asked if they were okay. They smiled but didn't say a word. Their silence was deafening. That night I kept feeling that something was seriously wrong. I tossed and turned, haunted by those blank stares. The next morning I packed my things and left before school even started. I realized I didn't want to be part of whatever dark secret was lurking in that town. To this day, I can't explain what I experienced there. Maple Valley seemed normal on the surface, but beneath it all, something was not right. I learned the hard way that some small towns bury their secrets deep, and sometimes it's best to stay away from places where silence speaks louder than words.